Aarav Malhotra and Meera Kapoor seemed like the perfect couple, a wealthy Indian groom and his young, glamorous wife living a dream life in Australia, until one shocking secret turned their fairy tale into a deadly nightmare. Aarav Malhotra was the kind of man people envied without really knowing why. At just 33, he had everything others spent lifetimes chasing: a flourishing real estate empire, luxury cars, and a spotless public image. Born in Mumbai but raised between Dubai and Sydney, he had built his fortune with focus and ruthless ambition. His parents, proud of their only son, believed it was time for him to settle down. Aarav, always the obedient son, agreed to meet a few families, though he was never one for emotional risks. That changed the day he met Meera Kapoor. Meera was 22, full of energy and charm that could light up a dull room. She wasn't from a wealthy background, but she had managed to create a name for herself through social media. Her profile was filled with glamorous photo shoots, travel vlogs, and motivational quotes that made her appear mature beyond her years. Aarav was immediately drawn to her confidence. To his family, Meera seemed like the perfect modern bride, educated, beautiful, and ambitious. Their marriage was arranged within weeks, and the families celebrated it as a perfect match between wealth and youth, power and beauty. The wedding took place in Sydney, where Aarav had recently opened a new branch of his company. It was a grand affair held in a 5-star resort overlooking the harbour, with guests flying in from India, Dubai, and London. The ceremony shimmered with gold and white, every detail meticulously planned. Meera looked radiant in a silk lehenga adorned with diamonds, while Aarav, dressed in an ivory sherwani, looked like a man who had achieved everything he ever wanted. Photographers followed them everywhere, capturing their smiles that would later flood the internet. Their wedding videos went viral on social media. Influencers praised the grandeur, calling it the wedding of the year. The couple's honeymoon photos, private jets, oceanfront villas, and candle-lit dinners made them seem inseparable. But behind the photos, something felt slightly hollow to Aarav. He loved Meera's presence, but he often felt she was performing, not living. Every moment was captured for her followers, every smile carefully measured. He brushed off the feeling, believing it was just the modern way of things. When they moved into Aarav's sprawling mansion in a quiet Sydney suburb, it seemed like the beginning of a dream life. The house was modern, filled with glass walls and designer furniture imported from Italy. Meera spent her days decorating rooms, exploring boutiques, and posting about her new chapter. Aarav admired her excitement, but he noticed she rarely mentioned him in her posts. Her captions spoke about independence, self-love, and ambition, words that felt distant from the warmth he hoped for in a marriage. Still, Aarav tried to be understanding. He took her to exclusive dinners, introduced her to his business circle, and encouraged her to pursue her interests. Everyone who met them said they looked perfect together, a power couple made for each other. But perfection is fragile, and in their glittering world, small cracks were already forming. Late at night, when Meera stayed glued to her phone, smiling at messages he couldn't see, Aarav would lie awake wondering who she really was beneath the flawless image. What he didn't know was that Meera carried secrets that would soon shatter everything he believed about love, loyalty, and the life they had built together. The first few months of married life passed smoothly, at least on the surface. Aarav devoted himself to work, expanding his business across Sydney and Melbourne, while Meera appeared to adjust well to her new lifestyle. She spent her days shopping, attending social events, and posting carefully curated photos online. Her social media following grew rapidly, and people began referring to her as one of Sydney's most stylish Indian influencers. To the outside world, she was living a dream, a young bride in a foreign land, married to a millionaire, surrounded by luxury and attention. But behind the polished perfection, Meera was leading a life that Aarav knew nothing about. It started innocently enough. Meera had always been ambitious. She liked the idea of fame and freedom more than domestic comfort. While Aarav saw marriage as the final step toward stability, Meera saw it as a stepping stone, an opportunity to build a brand, not a bond. She began attending private influencer parties where models, businessmen, and promoters mingled in exclusive rooftop bars. Aarav believed these gatherings were part of her work, something harmless, but gradually her nights out became more frequent, her explanations vaguer. When Aarav asked her about the late hours, she smiled it off, saying that networking was essential for visibility. He trusted her, though unease had started to grow. He was a man used to control, and Meera was a woman impossible to contain. Soon, packages began arriving at their home, almost daily: designer handbags, expensive perfumes, jewelry items Aarav didn't remember buying. When he questioned her, she said they were sponsored gifts from brands wanting her endorsement. It sounded plausible, and Aarav wanted to believe it. Yet, something didn't feel right. What Aarav didn't know was that Meera had been living a secret life long before she met him. Under a fake name, Maya, she had been working as an escort, catering to wealthy clients who paid handsomely for her time and charm. It wasn't just about money, it was about power. Meera loved being desired, admired, and in control. Even after marrying Aarav, she couldn't let go of that world. She told herself it was temporary, just a way to maintain her independence. But secrets rarely stay buried, especially when other people are involved. One of her regular clients, Daniel Reeves, a married Australian businessman in his late 40s, had grown dangerously attached to her. Daniel had met Meera through a private club in Sydney months before her marriage, and when he discovered she had married, his obsession deepened instead of fading. He would send her expensive gifts, follow her online, and beg her to meet him again. Meera tried to keep him at a distance, but Daniel had money and influence. Ignoring him wasn't easy. As the pressure from Daniel grew, Meera found herself caught between two lives: the respectable wife of a millionaire and the secret identity of a woman who lived on her own terms. The stress began to show in small ways. She became more defensive, more distant, more guarded. Aarav noticed the change but didn't understand it. He started sensing a wall between them, invisible yet solid. When she looked at him, her eyes seemed distracted, as if her mind was somewhere else. He began to wonder if her love had ever been real. To everyone outside their mansion, they were the perfect couple, a blend of beauty and success. But inside, trust was quietly dying. Aarav couldn't see the storm coming, and Meera couldn't stop it. The secret life she had carefully built was starting to slip through her fingers, and soon both of their worlds would collide in a way that neither could survive. Aarav Malhotra's life began to feel like it was slowly unraveling. For months, he had ignored the nagging voice in his head that whispered something was wrong. He wanted to believe his wife, to trust that her glamorous late nights and mysterious phone calls were just part of her social world. But one evening, everything changed. While Meera was in the shower, Aarav noticed her handbag left open on the bed. Inside, hidden beneath a folded scarf, was a small black phone he had never seen before. It wasn't the iPhone he had gifted her. It was an older model, cheap and scratched. His heart raced as he unlocked it easily. There was no password. What he saw on the screen shattered the image of the woman he thought he knew. Messages filled with hotel bookings, secret payments, and affectionate nicknames from men he had never heard of. There were transfers of large amounts of money from multiple accounts, all leading to Meera's. The final blow came when he scrolled through a folder of photos, pictures of Meera dressed elegantly in hotels, sometimes with men's hands visible in the frame. None of the photos showed their faces, but Aarav knew. It was her, his wife, his pride. He put the phone down slowly, feeling as though the air had been sucked from the room. His mind spun with disbelief and humiliation. How long had this been going on? How many times had she looked into his eyes and lied? For days, Aarav couldn't bring himself to confront her. He acted normal, going to work, eating dinner beside her, pretending everything was fine. But every word she spoke now sounded false. Every smile felt rehearsed. The love he once felt began to turn into cold rage. Unable to sleep, he reached out to a private investigator. He wanted proof, not just suspicions. Within a week, the investigator handed him a file thick with photos and records. There was Meera entering a luxury hotel in the city, wearing a red dress he remembered she'd bought for a brand event. A few hours later, the same man, identified as Daniel Reeves, was seen leaving with her. Aarav's chest tightened as he flipped through each picture. The betrayal was undeniable. He stared at the images for hours that night, replaying their entire relationship in his head, the wedding, the laughter, the promises. It all felt like an elaborate performance. His ego, his family's name, his reputation, everything was now a joke because of her. He stopped speaking to Meera except when necessary, and even then his tone was cold and detached. Meera noticed his silence but assumed it was stress from work. She had no idea that he already knew everything. In public, they still appeared perfect. They attended business dinners together, smiled for cameras, and celebrated their first wedding anniversary online with glamorous photos. Friends congratulated them on a beautiful year of love, but inside their home the silence was thick and suffocating. Aarav was waiting for the right time, the right moment, to end the web of lies. He started following her without her knowledge, tracking her car and checking her locations. Each new discovery only fueled his hatred. By the end of that month, Aarav had stopped thinking clearly. The betrayal consumed him day and night. Love had turned to disgust, and disgust had turned into something darker. He didn't know exactly what he was going to do, but he knew one thing with certainty: Meera would never betray him again. The night of their wedding anniversary was supposed to be a celebration of love and success, a year since two lives had joined in glitter and promise. Aarav planned every detail himself: the dinner, the flowers, the music, even the menu. He told everyone he wanted to surprise Meera, to make her feel cherished. To her, it seemed like the romantic gesture of a devoted husband. To him, it was the final act of a performance that had already ended. The mansion looked perfect that evening. Candles flickered across the dining table, and the faint sound of a slow piano tune drifted through the air. Meera arrived home wearing a silver gown that caught the light beautifully. She smiled when she saw the setting, thinking that maybe Aarav was finally warming up again. For weeks he had been distant, quiet, hard to read. She took the dinner as a sign of reconciliation, unaware that he had been carrying unbearable fury beneath his calm exterior. As they sat down, Aarav barely spoke. His eyes lingered on her face, then on the phone she placed on the table. The same type of phone he had found weeks ago, though this one was new. Meera talked about her upcoming event, about the brands wanting her collaboration, and about how grateful she was for the life they shared. But every word felt like poison to him now. He reached under the table, gripping the folder he had hidden beside his chair, the file containing photos, messages, and payment records. He had gone over it hundreds of times, memorizing each lie. When he finally placed the folder in front of her, Meera froze, her face drained of color as she flipped through the pages. Aarav watched her silently, his expression empty. She tried to speak, tried to explain, but he was no longer listening. Every sound around them faded, only the pounding in his head remained. The thought of other men touching her, of her laughing with them, shattered whatever restraint he had left. Aarav reached for the bottle of wine between them, his hand trembling as he poured himself another glass. The red liquid spilled over the rim, staining the white tablecloth. His heart raced, his vision narrowing to the image of her sitting across from him, the woman who had humiliated him, who had turned their love into deceit. The anger that had been simmering for weeks erupted in a single violent moment. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. Meera tried to back away, but Aarav grabbed the heavy crystal bottle and swung it with blinding rage. The sound of glass breaking filled the room, followed by a terrible silence. Meera collapsed instantly, motionless on the floor. The candle light flickered over the crimson stains spreading across the tiles. Aarav stood frozen, breathing hard, the bottle still in his hand. When realization struck, panic replaced fury. He dropped the bottle, trembling as he knelt beside her. There was no movement, no sound. He knew it was over. Hours passed before he moved again. In a cold trance, he wrapped her body in a white bedsheet, tied it with rope, and carried it to the garage. The house felt unbearably silent as he opened the trunk of his car and placed her inside. The drive to the Blue Mountains was long and quiet. The city lights faded behind him as the road grew darker. He didn't cry, didn't think, didn't pray. He stopped near a secluded patch of forest and dug with his bare hands, his suit covered in dirt and sweat. When he finally buried her, he stood staring at the mound of earth until dawn broke. Then he drove home, washed away the traces, and waited for the morning sun, ready to tell the world that his wife had vanished without a trace. For weeks after Meera's disappearance, Sydney was gripped by curiosity and suspicion. Social media exploded with theories, news outlets covered the story non-stop, and friends and family expressed shock and concern. Aarav Malhotra played the grieving husband perfectly. His public appearances were filled with solemn nods, slow tears, and heartfelt statements. Everyone who saw him believed he was devastated, and no one suspected the truth that he had been living with the consequences of his own actions. But beneath his composed exterior, fear had begun to creep in. The perfect plan, the meticulous cover-up, felt increasingly fragile. Authorities treated the case with seriousness from the start. Detectives noticed inconsistencies in Aarav's statements, small lies about timelines, contradictions in what he said he did on the night Meera vanished. They also found Meera's social media accounts, where her last posts hinted at tension but didn't reveal the severity of what had been happening. Investigators dug deeper, eventually uncovering her hidden phone, long forgotten in a drawer. The messages, hotel bookings, and transactions confirmed her secret life and linked her to Daniel Reeves, the Australian businessman who had been obsessed with her. Daniel, when questioned, initially tried to protect himself. He claimed he had no idea where she had gone and insisted that he had only known Meera through social events. But investigators had evidence of repeated contact and arranged meetings. Faced with mounting pressure, Daniel confessed the truth that he had last seen Meera on the night of her anniversary with Aarav, and that she had seemed frightened afterward. He revealed the secret meetings, the gifts, and the obsessive behavior that had marked her double life. With Daniel's confession, detectives revisited security footage from the night of the anniversary. They noticed Aarav's car leaving the house late in the evening, heading toward a remote area near the Blue Mountains. The footage alone didn't prove guilt, but combined with digital records, location data, and Daniel's testimony, it became impossible to ignore. Police organized a search party in the secluded area, using K9 units and ground crews to scour the terrain. Hours into the search, they discovered a small mound of earth. Digging carefully, they uncovered Meera's remains wrapped in the sheet, the signs of a violent end unmistakable. Aarav was arrested at his mansion without resistance. His expression was blank, as though he had been expecting this moment all along. During interrogation, he confessed in detail from the discovery of her secret life to the confrontation on their anniversary, and finally, the act that had ended her life. He described the rage that had overtaken him, the panic, and the steps he had taken to hide the evidence. Psychologists later analyzed his behavior, noting that the combination of betrayal, pride, and obsession had led to a lethal decision. The trial that followed became one of Sydney's most talked about criminal cases. Media coverage highlighted the stark contrast between the glamorous social media life and the grim reality of deceit and murder. Aarav was convicted of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment, with no chance of parole for decades. The story of Meera Kapoor and Aarav Malhotra became a chilling cautionary tale, a reminder that wealth and appearances can mask betrayal, and that hidden lives can collide with devastating consequences. In Australia, the mansion remained empty, a silent witness to a love story turned tragic, and the tale of two people, one driven by ambition and the other by vengeance, would never be forgotten.